And we are live on Facebook. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Welcome to another New Jersey Constitutional Republicans virtual conversation. Very pleased and honored today to have Mr. Kevin Ryan running for Assembly Republican and LD 27 today. Kevin, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Now, as we get started, tell the people a little bit about yourself, Kevin, and introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I think tuning in is, probably the best thing you can do, or the best first thing that you can do. So I appreciate that. I grew up in upstate New York in a very rural town that no one's ever heard of. I've lived in 3 states, Illinois, California, and New Jersey. Been back in New Jersey for the last 5 years, having moved back from California. Dad of 3 kids, husband, and I own my own business. And I've been on my own since about 2009. Kind of well known, I guess, in my area of expertise. Potentially respected.
And that is technological marketing, correct?
Yeah, digital strategy, communications, right. That sort of thing. I do a lot of crisis work. Very
good. And Kevin, inform the audience a little bit about the LD 27. What comprises LD 27? What counties are associated with that legislative district?
Yeah, so it's Morrison, Essex County, and I keep the list right in front of me at all times. Hanover, Harding, Chatham, Madison, Florham Park, Roseland, East Hanover, Livingston, Milburn, West Orange, South Orange, Maplewood, Essex Fells, and Caldwell. We'll be in Caldwell later today doing a meet and greet. About 250,000 people, very diverse economic backgrounds, very diverse voting backgrounds, a lot of independents. The Democrats definitely outnumber the Republicans. I mean, by a significant number. So we know what we're up against, but you got to give it your all, right?
That's right. And you're to be commended for wanting to represent the people of LD 27, as well as your partner, Jonathan Sim, correct? Jonathan Sim
Correct.
Is also your...
Only in America, right? So you have a guy like me, reasonably successful in my category, but I don't exactly have the Harvard Navy commander credentials. I'm really just a working schlub. So for me to even be on the ballot with a guy like that, that's just very American.
Right, and that is he's a good partner to have, and hopefully you'll be elected to properly represent the people of LD 27. Now, how long have we had the Democrat incumbency? How long have they held control of LD 27 in the Assembly?
So that would be since the 1970s.
Wow.
And I believe since the early 80s, we've had 1 senator. And for the last 20 years, one of the Assembly folks was in place. Which is just insane to me. I mean, one of the things that we need to work on is term limits here. And the other Assembly person, I believe, was appointed by the party and not elected, or eventually elected, but first appointed by the party, which just also absolutely blows my mind. So a very long time, and they have a very consistent voting record of 100% on the line, never deviating from the party, which is another thing. It's just, if that doesn't blow you away, I don't know what does. Nobody is that good. Nobody has gotten it right every single time for the last 40 years.
Right. And of course, you're well accustomed then to the Democrat modus operandi, if you will, of substantially representing only those who vote for them, their constituents. Whether they're made up of groups, sectarian groups, or public unions, or so forth. And as a Republican, and of course as a younger man running as a Republican, you understand the principles of liberty for all, which is what we talk about, which Abraham Lincoln talked about, liberty to all, giving everyone an equal opportunity and looking at everyone on an equal basis. 14th Amendment, equal protection, equal application of the law to all. And that's obviously something that has motivated you to want to represent the people of LD 27. Is that safe to say?
Very much so. We have entirely too much money flowing in. And this is kind of one of the side benefits or the side problems caused by, if you have a virtual lock in your win, and you have had for decades, you still take in campaign money. And instead of spending it on campaigning, you spread the money around to the rest of the party. So you push that money out into Essex County, you push it down. And we're seeing this now with money from even 27's candidates. And, it's easy to follow the money because it's public information. Money comes in from the teachers union. Money goes back out from the campaign into other campaigns and into local audiences, into local groups, members groups, or party member groups. And then we end up with what happened in Milburn this year, which was the head of the Democratic Party in Milburn was unapologetically all over social media talking about trying to recruit like-minded Board of Ed candidates. Well, where do they get the money to do that stuff? When you have districts where you don't have to spend money on awareness and campaigning, you're free to spend the money wherever you like. So that's one of the things that sort of bites us by not having competitive races.
And what is your view on Phil Murphy's unprecedented use of expansive executive power and order, essentially suspending the constitutional rights of freedom of assembly, of religious expression, and the New Jersey constitutional unalienable right of the ability for every individual to obtain, possess, and secure their property, which of course would be the money that's in their pocket or in their account and their businesses. What are your thoughts on this unprecedented shutdown of the state of New Jersey, depriving the people of these constitutional rights?
So it's amazing if you look at this from a macro perspective, where Murphy has executed these executive powers. By the way, step number one is get a functioning assembly again, get 3 functioning branches of government, because we don't have that right now. And people don't realize it. But if you look at this purely from a positioning perspective, he's shutting down other people's rights to assemble and communicate. He's pushing people into his communication channel, which is, and if you notice, there are only 2 elections in the country right now. And there's only one governor who's doing daily COVID updates still and daily press conferences. And he's pushing tons of information out through social media. That is communications genius. I just hope people are smart enough to realize that it's also campaigning, because it's unnecessary to keep people tuned into your channel. And he's just using it as an angle for free press.
Well said, Kevin. And also what's remarkable is, and you said something very, very important that I hope that the audience picks up on, is the necessity of bringing back all 3 branches of government working in unison, as opposed to the executive branch essentially acting as a monarchy, as we've seen under Phil Murphy's administration. But also the fact that really, and I've said this, and I don't want to disparage our state or our Senate President, Steve Sweeney, but I've said all along that the second most powerful person in the state of New Jersey after Phil Murphy during this COVID crisis has been Judith Prescicelli, who is the Department of Health, head of the Department of Health. And she's the one who's been recommending all of these unconstitutional lockdowns, all on the guise of public health. So as an assemblyman, you need to restore the exclusive right of legislation and creating law. And of course, all these executive orders, which are not found in our Constitution or the federal Constitution, have the force of law. And the Assembly and the Senate, you need to be the exclusive creators of law once again. Correct?
Absolutely. I mean, the concept of representation in general at this point is kind of thrown out the window, but proportional representation, which means that, as you were saying, everybody's being represented, not just people in your party,
Mhm.
That's a concept that we threw out a long time ago in this district.
Yeah. And it's important that that is brought back. And that's really because you're going to have a lot of independents, I'm sure, in LD 27. And you're going to have a lot of Republicans that need to be motivated. The Republicans need to get out and force 100% Republicans voting in LD 27 so that you're able to garner the votes to win. These independents have to step up. And there are also, Kevin, there has to be some rational thinking Democrats left that understand that the Murphy agenda and the agenda for the Democratic Party in the state of New Jersey is woefully discriminatory. And they accuse us of being that, but in all actuality, they are the ones who are discriminant. And you want to apply equal protection of the law to all the citizens. And this is what needs to be taught to the voters. And I'm sure you're talking about this on the campaign trail.
We're out in every single town. We've done multiple meet and greets. We're going to continue doing them until the day of. Part of the challenge of a lot of this is that people just don't understand how this stuff works. And you have to explain things like, and I don't mean to explain it in any way a condescending or a pedantic way, because I've recently only learned about these things.
Yes.
I followed the money. The public information, you file Oprah requests, you have to have time, the energy to get that information. And then you have to have the courage to publish it. And then, only then, if you can find somebody to publish it, because as we know, editorial content for our party is not what you would refer to as plentiful. So it's increasingly difficult just to get information out there. But yeah, I mean, having to explain, and I gave a talk. We had a fundraiser at our home in Short Hills a couple of weeks ago, and talked to a few people who were in the district. They said, "How many people did you have? You had 100 people come to your house in Short Hills to hear a Republican? That's incredible." And it was so great to just interact with people. And I say things to people like, a small business owner, a bakery that I met in East Hanover, right? Somerset Bakery, the owner. We have another coffee shop in Milburn, another sole proprietor. Didn't close one day during the pandemic. The last thing they want to do is owe the government money. And it's really important to understand. And I'm explaining to folks, and these are like really senior financial people who have never owned a business before. And I'm not faulting people who don't own businesses. A lot of people work in big corporate, and that's fine. My wife works in big corporate, but they don't understand the difference between having a $150,000 debt to, say, the government and owing them money, or having a personal debt protection, right? We have bankruptcy protections. When you owe the government money, they'll get their money and they'll impose fees and they'll take your property. There is no protection. And it's okay to have to explain stuff like that. But those are the kinds of things that people don't understand. When you're becoming dependent upon government, you're not independent. And the only kind of independence that we have pretty much in the universe is financial independence, because that drives everything else.
Outstanding, Kevin. And what you're doing is you are accentuating a very, very important priority of the constitutional Republican movement, and that is representatives effectively educating their voters and their constituents, which is what you have to do. And in return, the citizens need to require from their representatives constitutional literacy and an intellectual rigor in understanding these things. So it's a two-way street, and it's very much like an educator and a student, and there's no shame in that. That has to be done, because for far too long, the Democrats have sold this false bill of goods that government is here to do this and do that and to take care of you and to give you these rights. And we know that the government does not give rights, as we see what our Declaration of Independence clearly says, that rights are given by God, starting with the unalienable right to life, the ability to pursue liberty, which is very important to us, and to provide your own pursuit of happiness within a safe environment. So you're to be commended for wanting to educate the citizens on all of these different, very, very important topics. And really, Kevin, what it gets down to is, what is the purpose of government? This is the question we ask all the time. The Democrats think that the purpose of government is for special rights and privileges to those who vote for them, excluding
Right.
those who do not vote for them, right? But as Republicans, we believe that the purpose of government is what the founders believed, which was to secure the person, number one, and then number two, to secure their property. And that is what government is supposed to do, and nothing more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really amazing to me, and I'm just a guy, I joke around this. One of the reasons I love Jonathan Sims so much is that everyone I know that I interact with, a lot of people who went to Harvard, they somehow work into the conversation within 30 seconds of meeting them, some relevant reference to having gone to Harvard, which I think is cute.
Yeah.
But I'm just a guy who graduated summa cum average from the State University of New York, and it took me twice as long as other people because later in life I was diagnosed with a learning disability, and so when it comes to education, it's so important to me to be able to interact with people and to explain things to people on a level that they can understand, right? Owe the bank money protection. Oh, the government money, they take your house and then all of your future income. And it's just not, there's a difference. And that's one of the things that I've been able to excel in my work life, is that I take very complicated subject matter and I'm able to present it in a way that people understand it. So talking to the average person on the street is no different than explaining something to your average chief marketing officer.
And another issue that's very important to you, being a father, Kevin, is the fact that you believe that Trenton, there shouldn't be the state should not be controlling education, but it should start, number one, with the parents and never should end with the parents, and then the local school boards and local education, correct? This is an issue you're passionate about.
So it very much is, and we need to be clear about what the role of the Board of Education is, because depending, and this is where you see a just an unbelievably diverse set of opinions. When you look at East Hanover or Caldwell, it's different than Maplewood. Like people are, but they do have, people think differently, but they do have some common ground. So we need to define what those boards of education are. I think that they should continue to be nonpartisan. A lot of people think even national politics has no place in New Jersey. And it's what's amazing to me, and you would expect this from socialist Democrats, but you would expect them to be good at bringing communication down the line. And it's very impressive to me from the top that they all say the same thing, right? When Murphy runs out of ammo in the debate, he goes right to the old standbys, Trump and Confederate flags, right? We only have one flag in this country. And I don't know anyone in New Jersey who has a Confederate flag. Maybe they're here, but I don't know them. And I just think going to that is a good way to not talk about issues.
That's right. And of course, our Republican Party, Kevin, was the one that preserved our flag, preserved our Constitution. And of course, we were able to preserve the Union, by which we've been able to benefit from in subsequent generations from that. We can attribute that all to Republican Party success and the great Republicans led by Abraham Lincoln and Thaddeus Stevens and Charles Sumner and Calvin Coolidge and Ronald Reagan. We have a very proud heritage that we should never be ashamed to discuss and to promote. And I know that that's what you're doing. I'd like to do at this time, I'd like to share a screen because I'd like to bring up your fine website that I want to direct the people to. And here it is. This is at ryanfornj.com. And Kevin, just go tell us a little bit about the website. I thought it was really good. Really sharp design, very easy to access. And here you go with your updates and a lot of the different positions that you're taking. So talk a little bit about this page here, tax, regulate, and repeat, starting with that.
So this is where the updates and opinions area is where I deposit, my positions on one, it's something that maybe happened in the news. Anything that's tax, regulate, and repeat is just this vicious cycle of how big government functions. I wrote about the migrant surge. Not many people know this, but my wife grew up in India, so she had never been to Texas. So we went to Texas this year, and we drove to the border as part of our vacation. And firsthand, we went to Laredo. We met with Henry Cuellar. We met with border agents and talked to them. So when I have content like that, I publish it here first and then post it to Facebook or other social channels, because this is an asset that I own. The information can't be twisted. It can't be nerfed. When I need to push information out, and this is a very solid strategy for a lot of people, or should be, don't count on Facebook to distribute content. You're responsible for your own content. It's very Republican entrepreneurial way to look at things, because you're not relying upon Facebook. You're pushing your own content, and then you control the amount of reach it has.
Yes. Excellent. And I really would encourage the audience to check out Ryan for NJ.com. Some really good stuff here. Reading it, I was really, and I was impressed with it's time for fearless representation in Trenton. And boy, isn't that the truth? And representation is the key word there.
Right.
And what always amazes me, Ryan, is that the Democratic voters will say, well, what's the government going to do for me? And what are you going to do for me? How are you going to help me out? Whereas, you as Republicans, we are looking at representing the people. It's about representing and preserving their natural rights and what they can do for themselves. And there's truly a real separation there between those two philosophies, isn't there?
Yeah, so there's the make you dependent upon government strategy, and then there's the prop you up and help you be successful strategy, right? And the former is what we have now, and I think it's largely because we've been forced into the situation. Yeah, there's a post there. Jack has been tremendous with his time. That's us at, I think we went to Par 440 or a bakery to go talk to people. And you'll see a lot. You see a lot of photos of me with Jack. It's really funny because I'm usually introducing him to somebody. Like, oh, hey, you don't need to talk to me. You need to meet this taxpayer. You need to meet, this voter. Like he and I can talk all day long. But what he needs to do, as I do, is go out and talk to voters, and he is just really, really good at that. But little bit of a sidetrack there. But there is an approach that works. I mean, a lot of this is tied to education. Our focus, it seems, is just backwards right now. In Maplewood, which is also in the district, we're wanting to change the name of the Jefferson School. 2 towns over in Newark, 9 out of 10 kids can't do math. So the system, and we're still paying the highest per student cost in the country. Or among the highest?
Right.
So where's that money going? Are we getting any value for it? And we could talk about, look, if you want to change the name of the school, fine, change it to whatever you like, but don't pretend that you're doing something you care about all the kids, not just the ones in your neighborhood. Because go to places like Patterson, go to places like Newark, as I've gone door knocking with Billy Prempey in Patterson, and it's a different kind of perspective. People wonder where their money has gone, and they people as a rule don't like being dependent upon government. They want ways to be propped up. They want that access to that opportunity so that they can prove that they can do, they can be successful as well.
No question. Of course, civil liberties in medicine is a very, very important issue, as we've had to endure the COVID-19 lockdowns. And of course, now the vaccines have become an issue. And really what's remarkable, Kevin, is that there is no settled science in any direction, in any of the ideas supporting lockdowns or in legislating or forcing mandates upon the people. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm definitely not a doctor. I've had COVID, and it just feels bizarre to me that I'm even sharing medical information with you. Like, what are we going to talk about next? That fun week we had in college. No, we're not going to talk about those things because we're going to put the brakes on this nonsense. I went to go speak at an event in the city 2 weeks ago. I had to show my Vax card 4 times just to get into the building. We really have to tap the brakes on disclosing medical information, because what happened to HIPAA? We have to be, and this is another thing where you sort of have to educate people. I tell the story of going to Abu Dhabi on business earlier this year in February, and they hand you you hand your phone to them when you land at the airport, and they give it back to you with an app on it. And it's a 24-hour day active app that's constantly pinging you and knows where you are. And there's this little message that pops up and says, Al Hassan's keeping you safe. Al Hassan's keeping you safe. So you get that served up with your Dunkin' Donuts ads on your phone. And it just, I tell that story, people are like, wow, that's amazing. I'm like, no, it isn't. There's nothing amazing about having government have that level of intrusion in your lives. Do you understand what information that can be collected and what it can be used for? And once you start to explain to people how these things look, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's not a Tucker Carlson talking point. It's not a Rachel Maddow talking point. These are things that are actually happening. And you have to understand that many of our legislators don't even understand how this technology works. By the way, the painted elephant there on the site is a nod to my wife's heritage, right? The painted elephant, the Indian elephant.
I noticed that, Kevin. I was going to mention that. There it is right there. The Indian elephant. That's very unique, and a tribute to your wife. That's great. And of course, we also see a picture of a beautiful German Shepherd that you have there, Kevin. Tell us a little bit about your friend there.
Yeah, that's she's also the love of my life. I've always been a shepherd guy. My last one was adopted. I adopted a police dog, and this gal came from a friend of ours in Ojai, California, and I've raised her since she was a pup.
There she is.
And like she is yeah, absolutely fantastic. The highest maintenance dog I think I've ever had. But a very good protector.
That's great that you got her in there. And of course, there's also a picture with you with your running mate, Mr. Sim. There will be coming up. There you are on the left there. So
yeah, that was the night in the Morris County GOP where they announced us by proclamation. And if you've never had that done before or never heard of that, that is, you're in a room full of 100 peers and they all shout your name, and that's how you get on the ballot once you've submitted your signatures and all your other paperwork. It's pretty incredible. It's a wonderful feeling.
Well, they certainly picked 2 fine assembly candidates. I can attest to that. And I want to, in the vein that we're discussing how important it is to educate your constituents, which is what you're doing. And here's a perfect example of it. And this is what initially caught my eye when you sent me this article. This was, how did you possibly get NJ.com to, number one, take on the op-ed, if you will, and then what a fine article you wrote here. And of course, you can see this on NJ.com opinion 2021. God may forgive, but Google never forgets. Opinion. So tell us a little bit about this interesting article.
So I this is a combination of something that happened in my town and a nod to some of the work that I do. I mentioned I do crisis work. Some of that is brand presence management. Some of that it relates to what your universe looks like online. And for every person that I will take on as a client and they'll be able to cover off on a fee, I do 100 pro bono calls to people who just got canceled in some way. And it's tremendously difficult, while at the same time rewarding, because there's so much that goes on with people once their presence is changed forever. You make one little mistake and you'll be known for that the rest of your life. So there's a couple things that are going on. I see this world from a perspective that many people don't. When I see the abuses that are occurring, I see the digital economy that is propping up this sort of thinking, right? The dopamine traps. So there are ways that we can dismantle this. I doubt very much it'll happen at the federal government level, mainly because Facebook and all of the other, a lot of the large Silicon Valley providers, they're spending a lot of money on lobbying right now, saying they want more legislation. Well, anytime a private company says they want more legislation, you really, that should not pass anyone's sniff test. So what I've written about here is there was a situation in Short Hills where there was an argument at a Victoria's Secret where two people were buying underwear. One was a black person, one was a white person. And it just, the situation in and of itself, I didn't really want to get into, but the way that these people were treated and the way the digital economy props them up, I don't care what side of the argument you're on, it should not be this easy to ruin someone. It should not be this easy to take one side of a story and just disseminate it to the detriment of one person and to support the dopamine trap digital economy. So what I wanted to do is tell people about that. Like, look, this is how it really works. And I've seen it in the most horrible circumstances. I've seen people just getting destroyed. And I watch how other people exploit that to make money. And these people aren't given due process. There's no judge and jury. It's the mob of public opinion. So I think if we take steps to start to dismantle the digital economy that supports it, we'll start to move forward. We at least explain to people how they're being manipulated and who's gaining from that. And once you grab that, it's a big deal. And as far as getting it published, I work in the industry, and there are a lot of people who are committed to getting the truth out there, even if that truth is not something that they agree with, and that's impressive. A lot of the people I work with are not aligned with me politically. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the advertising industry, but it's not an industry that favors Republicans. But I have people in my it's like, it, I know it, the whole world knows it. It's advertising. It's all about positioning. And I have people who are completely on the opposite spectrum of me politically reaching out to me and saying, look, I don't like your politics, but here's a donation because you work hard and I think you'll be good at the job. And that's true of a lot of people in this area. They're like Democrats, independents. Those are the only people who are going to be able to change. Right. If I'm just talking to Republicans, I'm wasting my energy. So I do spend a lot of time out talking to people who disagree with me.
And of course, here is Kevin's Facebook page. You're going to want to go to this. Kevin Ryan for New Jersey Assembly, LD 27. And one thing that's remarkable, Kevin, is that there's a lack of name recognition often in these political contests or in these elections. Up until really the debates, many people in New Jersey never even heard of Jack Ciattarelli. And of course, now they're much more familiar with him as a result of the debates and the subsequent media afterwards. But also, this is why it's important for your supporters, for Republicans in LD 27, to get your name out there amongst the constituents of LD 27 and say, listen, have you read and have you looked up Jonathan Sim and Kevin Ryan as your assembly candidates? And as we're talking to you, Kevin, we've already shown your fine website, positions on policies, your acumen for technology and information technology, which incidentally would be a valuable asset for the assembly in our government, our state government, with your knowledge of digital technology, which is so lacking amongst many of the representatives that are there now. You could really be a great influence on what needs to be done. Of course, we heard all about the inadequate, and obsolete forms of technology when it came to getting out worker benefits or getting unemployment benefits out. So these are all areas that I'm sure you would fit into a committee on information technology and provide a tremendous service to the people of New Jersey.
we need to have some private sector influence in this. Like when we talk about systemic corruption, that exists, even as it relates to technology. And if you go to a state website and you feel like it's 1998, there's a reason for that, because the systemically corrupt system of only rewarding contracts to certain types of people who fall in line with the party line and that sort of thing, or even just giving access to people. We need to get away from that. And some of that, if we're as competitive as it should be, we should never be having these sorts of problems at the government level. There are lots of ways to streamline these things. And I'll agree and I'll acquiesce that it's infinitely complex to get your arms around some of these things, but that should be the job of our legislators. That should be the job of a government that helps prop us up and give us access to resources, as opposed to just continuing to award contracts to, I don't even know who's building some of these channels, but they really look antiquated.
Well, Kevin, I'm sure you have a very busy slate from here until November the 2nd. As we conclude the show, what would you like for the people of LD 27 to know as we conclude this broadcast?
I think you have some really good options here, just in terms of having a more engaged, more transparent, more proportionately representative government. All you have to do is get out and vote, and support your candidates, get to know your candidates, and get your friends and family members excited about voting. Get them excited about taking the position of the Republican small government person. I can't tell you how many times I hear from people, and I do hear from people that disagree with me. But by and large, I'm hearing from people who are saying, "Thank you for standing up for the rule of small government, the principles of the party of Lincoln. All of these things serve people in ways that we're not being served now." So get out there, make sure your vote counts, make sure you vote, make sure everyone you know is excited about it, and don't be ashamed to be a constitutional Republican.
Outstanding, Kevin, and you certainly personify everything that we hope and we're working hard to create in candidates. You're personifying all of this. A restored Republican Party, a rejuvenated Republican Party, essentially going back to its initial principles, which resonate forever, because our party was founded on the principles of the Declaration of Independence and the self-evident truth that all men are created equal, unalienable rights, among them being life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, the laws of nature and nature's God, and with the consent of the governed. We agreed to be governed as long as the government is securing our rights. And we see that the Democrats, they don't personify that principle, but young Republicans like yourself, very encouraging. We're very happy about your candidacy, and we hope to do anything that we can to help you succeed and get elected and be a fine representative for the people of LD 27.
Thanks very much for having me. Visit the site, reach out to me directly. We still have a few lawn signs that we can put out. We're happy to get that organized. And we'll be I think we have 7 meet and greets between now and next week. Tonight, this afternoon, we'll be in Caldwell at Calandra's Bakery.
And we will provide the link to the website and also the Facebook page. Please help Kevin and his running mate, Jonathan Sims, as well. All the best, Kevin. It's great to have you with us. I look forward to coming up there and shaking your hand someday, and bring home a victory for the people of LD 27.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're working for. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Remember, as Kevin is going about proclaiming what Lincoln said, and of course, what all constitutional Republicans say as well, and that is liberty to all. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks.